I'm Chris Toplack of The Signature Spot, and today I wanted to focus on my love and admiration and respect for the brand known as NXT and really discuss what it has meant to me as a devoted and diehard wrestling fan, because this is a brand that I keep very near and dear to my heart. And I understand that NXT 2.0, as they've labeled it as, will be launching in just a matter of days. There's a lot of nerves attached to it. There's uncertainty. I'm trepidatious as well, too. I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible. I'm not here to knock what is happening in terms of the refresh and the new logo and the new mentality and Vince and Bruce Pritchard and Kevin Dunn being involved. Yes, I'm very nervous because this brand has meant so much to me, but I want to spend this time with you discussing why it has meant so much to me. Because when it launched on the WWE Network, it was a true alternative. It was something different. For somebody like myself who really loves professional wrestling, it felt as though it was the closest thing that we got as it relates to WWE. And again, not knocking WWE, but they're all about sports entertainment. And NXT was just something different. And of course, that was the influence of Triple H and William Regal and so many others that do love professional wrestling. And of course, the production value was there. The characters and storylines were there as well too. But when it launched, it intrigued me so much because it was a condensed show. It was about an hour long. And I thought for years it was the best program on television, period, as it relates to wrestling. They accomplished so much within that hour time frame. And I mean, perhaps this is a bold statement, but from 2014 until about 2018, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better wrestling program than NXT. For that very reason, it was just so incredibly compelling. The ring work was high quality. The characters were fantastic. They weren't sticking to a rigid script like we see on so many other programs. Just felt as though they can be themselves, and it featured so many massive moments as well too. I mean, who could forget about the arrival of Nakamura? I'll get to that in a second. Or Finn Balor, or Samoa Joe, and all these big names. And of course, the incredible matches as well too, which I got to see live. So I've attended 2 NXT takeovers in person. And the best match I've probably ever seen live in my entire life was that 2 to 3 Falls tag team match at NXT TakeOver Toronto against the Revival in DIY. My God, it was a roller coaster ride, and just from bell to bell, nonstop action. It incorporated psychology, storytelling. It was unbelievable to see that live. And my favorite experience as a professional wrestling fan. Keep in mind, I've been to TNA events live. I've been to SummerSlam, Survivor Series live. AEW Full Gear is right at the very top too. I'd put it actually right behind this, but my number one experience, and I found the ticket, brings back a lot of nostalgic memories. NXT Live at Full Sail University. Take a look at that. It was on October 17th, 2018. $10. $10. I repeat, $10 to get in at 141 University Park Drive, Winter Park, Florida. It was amazing. I got to see 4 weeks worth of tapings featuring the likes of Aleister Black and Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole, so many others, Ricochet. There's other names I'm not going to mention, like Velveteen Dream. Fine, I'll mention the name. At the time, I mean, he was on fire, Tommaso Ciampa. But it was just an outstanding 4 weeks. I was on camera side. If you go back and you watch those episodes, you can see my wife and I there. And we're watching them for $10 to absorb that amount of quality wrestling and the storylines involved. Doesn't get better than that. So it was my favorite experience as a wrestling fan, NXT Live at Full Sail. There's actually a photo of myself got to meet them, and they were so lovely. Io Shirai and Kairi Sane as well, too. One of the only times I've ever really approached wrestlers. I've interviewed wrestlers quite a bit back in my days of radio and even podcasting. But I was kind of standing there looking at different food trucks. I got to chat with Io Shirai and Kairi Sane, and they couldn't have been any nicer to me. It was just such a marvelous experience. And it's weird because I feel as though I'm partially saying goodbye to a brand that I love so much. And I kind of already had to say goodbye in 2019. And the reason why was that in Canada, when NXT moved over to the USA Network, there was no deal in Canada at the time. Of course, that has changed. But at the time, we couldn't watch it. So when AEW Dynamite launched in Canada, that's what I watched, and I still watch every single Wednesday. I've never missed an episode of Dynamite, and I love it. So I was watching that, and I missed all the different NXT episodes, and it sucks because I couldn't go back and watch them on the WWE Network. I think for a while they aired there, and then they were gone. So I started to miss all the different episodes, and this was a show I watched religiously every single Wednesday. Never missed a takeover event, all of that. So I started to somewhat fall away from NXT, even though I still caught up on the episodes and I also watched the events. But it was also like I was separating myself from it because I never got to watch it live, and I watched AEW instead. Then when they moved to Tuesdays, I started to watch it. But it's a tough move when you go to network television. I could tell that the 2-hour show and the pressures of the USA Network, and I'm sure Vince and Kevin Dunn and so many others, it altered the show. It didn't feel quite the same as it did. By no means was it a bad show, still excellent. But it didn't feel the same way as it did when it was an hour long. That was my favorite time. And I can tell you this, candidly. I mean, and you know me, based on the fact that all the posts that are written, I mean, everything comes from me and the content flows through me, is that, whether it was, WWF Superstars, ECW, Mid-South, WCCW, WCW, and of course recently AEW, you name all these brands. I'm very familiar with professional wrestling, somewhat of an encyclopedia because I've consumed so much of it. But NXT was one of my favorite shows and brands ever. As a wrestling fan, just so much fun. And it's just a shame to see where it's gone. But again, I'm trying to be optimistic. I think we all need to give it a chance because it is a great alternative. I really believe that without an alternative like NXT laying down the framework, who knows if AEW would have come to fruition the way that it did, because it was really the first true alternative away from WWE, and the fingerprints weren't all over it. So a big kudos goes to Triple H and so many others, and of course the performers, for really creating that brand. And, before we part ways, I want to relive a couple of moments and share with you what my favorite moments were. But it's just those pressures that I think really altered the perspective of NXT. But again, I'm still hopeful. They have a lot of great talent there. One of the best, if not the best, women's division in the entire world. And so many talented performers are still there. Wrestlers, I should say. So I'm really looking forward to it. But again, it's the end of an era. With Adam Cole even being gone, it's really apropos and signifies this new era that they're heading into. So I'm hoping for the best. But just wanted to say really quickly before we part ways, one of my favorite moments ever, the one that I've rewatched more than anything NXT related, there's a couple. Ricochet and Aleister Black leaving. That match against the War Raiders was an emotional one for me just because those two meant so much to the brand, and they've never been utilized well on the main roster. Obviously, Aleister Black now, Malachi Black, but Ricochet, same scenario. But also to me, the arrival of Shinsuke Nakamura, NXT TakeOver Dallas, the evening before WrestleMania 32, I believe. And you had Nakamura versus Sami Zayn. That's the match I've gone back and watched more than any other. Just high emotion on both sides because you had this rock star arriving of Nakamura, this enigma from Japan who was a big name. And then it was Sami Zayn, who was really the heart and soul of the brand, saying goodbye and moving on to the main roster. So that was my all-time favorite match, actually, in terms of like the emotion behind it. But, in terms of what I saw live, of course, that 2 to 3 falls tag team match was spectacular. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. That original feud was one of my all-time favorite feuds. I've covered it in depth in a podcast episode. You can actually find it on YouTube. I'll link it as well. And I've covered it in the form of an article on thesignaturesspot.com. And I hold that in a very high regard as well, too. So just wanted to share some thoughts about NXT, tell you about that amazing experience I have that, to this day, remains my all-time favorite. That speaks volumes. I've attended every sporting event that you could see under the sun. it couldn't top NXT Live at Full Sail. And even when they left Full Sail, to me, it was just another kind of emotional goodbye, right? Where you think, just a different brand. And that's okay. The facelift, again, let's just be optimistic and see what happens. But wanted to share my thoughts very candidly. You can tell I go into these aspects completely unscripted, just as we love in professional wrestling, and it's genuinely from the heart. So just an ode to NXT, if you will. And thank you for your support, by the way, on the Signature Spa website and all the social media pages. It means a great deal. Happy trails to you until we meet again.